Hi everybody, welcome to the preamble to our first meeting of the Probus North York online book club. I'm going to give you a few preliminary notes to Hum If You Don't Know the Words so that when we get together next Thursday, we'll be ready to discuss the novel and have had some time to think about some of the talking points. A quick reminder, if you want to join us next Thursday, please be sure that you have registered for the book club. There are some spots left. You can only join by registering, and then you will receive the link to the Zoom meeting next Wednesday, the day before book club. On the day of the book club, just click the Zoom link and that will take you directly to our meeting. The password is embedded in the link. If you did register and you haven't received the link by Thursday morning at 9 a.m., please do email me at patricia.morgan@gmail.com and I'll send a link right out to you. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Hum If You Don't Know the Words by Bianca Murray. As you probably know, Bianca Murray did grow up in South Africa, and I think this is something to keep in mind because this is most definitely a post-colonial novel. It's one that looks at a formerly colonized place, South Africa, and considers the effects of colonization on the current, in this case 1976, society. We have the colonizers represented by the English, Robin, her parents, and Robin's aunt Edith, and by the Boers. The Boers are represented by Wilhelmina and by the neighbors who live around Robin and her family in the suburbs. The colonized principal characters who we are looking at are Mabel and Beauty, and of course there are an array of other black characters that come in and out of the novel. Colonization is foregrounded, first of all, in the murder of Robin's parents, secondly, by the subsequent treatment of Mabel in the police station, and then this colonization is focused on language by the Soweto uprisings, which happened very early in this novel. The immediate cause of the Soweto riots was the imposition of education of black children in 50% English, which up until then had been 100% of the language of education for black students, and 50% Afrikaans, which blacks regarded as the language of the colonizers. As readers, I think we're constantly aware that in fact both English and Afrikaans are the languages of the colonizer. Okay, so since it's a post-colonial novel, I think it's useful to know a little bit or keep in mind a little bit about how South Africa came to be a colonial state. In the early 16th century, Portuguese mariners are in and out of South Africa, largely around the Cape. It's a good landing place and a good place for trading vessels who need to refresh water and supplies. By 1650, the Dutch have moved in and established the Dutch East India Company as part of the Cape Colony. The native population is expelled by the Dutch, and any who weren't pushed out by the Dutch moving in to establish the Cape Colony were pretty much finished off by smallpox in about 1680. The Dutch burghers who came in after the mariners spread out to farm, and they imported slaves as well as enslaving or pressing into indentured servitude the few remaining blacks at the Cape. Afrikaans, the spoken language, is a version of the Dutch language. In the early 19th century, the British bought the Cape Colony from the Dutch, and in 1806 outlawed Afrikaans as the language and abolished slavery in 1838. At this point, black children begin to be educated by missionaries coming from Britain, and this begins English as the language of education. The Boers head inland in order to keep their language and to keep their slaves. The two Boer Wars are consequent of the Boers leaving but staying in the South African area. Consequent to the Boer War was the Land Act, which set aside 90% of the land in South Africa for whites and 8% of the land for the blacks. This is an interesting situation since 20% of the people, the white people, hold about 90% of the land. This continues through World War I and II. At the end of World War II, apartheid is declared. This forced the evacuation of black Africans to designated homelands. It very much followed the same pattern as the partition of India in 1947 that forced Hindus and Muslims into different areas in India without very much regard to where people were already settled. In 1966, the UN identifies apartheid as a crime against humanity and suspends South Africa from the United Nations in 1974. So as we come to 1976, when this novel is set, South Africa is clearly in a great state of unrest. Okay. The Soweto riots in 1976 were instigated by school children, and it pivots on language. South Africa is a multilingual society with the original settlers speaking Afrikaans and the later settlers during and after the Boer War speaking English. Black Africans regarded Afrikaans as the language of the oppressor, and English as a more urban and prestigious language, and they preferred to have their children educated in English. The imposition of the 50-50 Afrikaans and English language in schools is intended to prepare the black population to be good workers and good servants, because they will be able to understand their masters, whether those masters speak English or Afrikaans. One government official is quoted in the Education Act as saying, "Blacks must be taught from an early age that equality with Europeans is not for them." So, this language turns on the importance of language and of knowing the words, and the dangers of humming or improvising. The first time we are introduced to this notion of singing your own song and knowing your own words is Beauty musing on the aftermath of the Soweto riots. She says, "Young people are singing a song, one that is accompanied by the beating of 1,000 drums and makes my heart beat quicken. Yet, as much as I want to sing along with them, I do not know the words. Perhaps this is what it means to get old. You must let the young ones sing their own songs." We have a second passage further on at the funeral of Robin's parents, where Robin is upset because she doesn't know the words of the hymn that the organist has begun to play. She tugs on Edith's arm and says, "I don't know this song. They didn't teach it to us at school." And Edith replies, "When in doubt, just do what I do, Robs. Hum if you don't know the words." Both Robin's mothers, Edith and Beauty, recognize that they do not always have the capacity to join in. Beauty's point of view is that not all songs are for her to sing. Edith's point of view is that one should fake it until the way is clear. But what are the consequences in this novel of humming or acting without full understanding of the situation? Beauty puts Nomsa in more danger because she does not follow Maggie's good advice. Maggie already has a very good network of informants who are trying to find out what happened to Nomsa, and Beauty continually humming or faking it and making inquiries about Nomsa's whereabouts actually put Nomsa in even more danger. The consequences of Beauty's humming or improvising, in fact, even lead to one man who, at Fatty Boom Boom's Shebeen, being killed. And we wonder if there might be others who are are seriously harmed by Beauty's constant investigating. We also see the consequences of Edith improvising when she really doesn't understand the entire situation, when she doesn't know the words. A good example of this is when she accuses Beauty of stealing her jewelry. Clearly, Edith doesn't know the whole story. Robin didn't share the whole story with her, but Edith takes Robin's denial at face value and leaps to the conclusion that Beauty must be the guilty party. We also see what happens when words are withheld when Robin withholds Nomsa's letter that is intended for Beauty. She is afraid that if she gives the letter to Beauty, Beauty will leave. She doesn't know the contents of the letter. She hums. She assumes what must be in there, and in fact, she is completely wrong. Another way that language functions in this novel is that it foregrounds differences and setups sometimes false oppositions. For example, we have Robin's friend's mother returning the book that Robin has lent her friend because the book has the names Dick and Fanny in it. To the mother of Robin's friend, who is an Afrikaans speaker, Dick and Fanny are rude words, and no novel that has these words in it would be suitable for a young girl to read. We also see language foregrounded in King George. As a colored man, one of mixed race, he also speaks in a mixture of English and Afrikaans. We also see where words break down. For example, the brick being thrown through the window at Victor's Christmas party. Beauty's letter to Robin is a catalyst for action. Robin finally understands the words when she gets the full story with Beauty's letter, that Beauty will not leave her. Beauty will not be taking Nomsa back to the homeland. Nomsa's letter is the last part of Robin's understanding, where Nomsa is not asking her mother to take her home. So Robin has to learn all the words before she can appropriately act and stop humming. When we get together on Thursday, I think that we'll want to talk more about the characters, the language, the events, what you really enjoyed about the novel, what gave you trouble or pause, and I look forward to hearing more of your thoughts.